At 70, people assume love has settled down into a quiet routine, that it no longer pulses with the same electricity. But here's a question. Does getting older mean romance fades, or simply changes form? Today, we're asking something both personal and universal. How do we keep romance alive after 70? If you're watching this and you're over 60, I'd like to hear your thoughts right away. What does romance look like for you today? Drop a comment below. Your voice matters here. And while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel. This space is made for you, and your wisdom helps shape it. Now, back to the question. For many of us, life past retirement brings with it a strange kind of silence. The children are grown, the career demands are gone, and suddenly, there's just you and your partner. Or maybe you're finding new love altogether. Either way, one thing remains clear. The human need for connection doesn't disappear with age. In fact, it deepens. Yet so often, we hear from our peers, the spark is gone. We've grown apart. We just live side by side now. That sense of emotional distance, it's more common than we admit. But it doesn't have to be permanent. Romance in our later years isn't about grand gestures. It's not about flowers or candlelit dinners, though those can still be lovely. It's about intimacy, about choosing to be present, about rebuilding little bridges, one shared look, one soft word at a time. In this video, we'll explore 5 powerful ways to reignite that emotional spark. Each approach comes from real stories, real research, and real wisdom, the kind that only time can give. And with each one, I want to know, does this resonate with your experience? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's make this a conversation, not just a monologue. So, how do we keep the flame alive after 70? Let's begin with the first key. Number 1. Rediscovering shared rituals. Let me tell you a story. Harold and Ellen had been married for 48 years. They'd raised 3 kids, moved homes twice, and gone through their fair share of ups and downs. But by the time Harold turned 73, they found themselves drifting. Conversations became routine. Their days predictable. Romance? It felt like a distant memory. One afternoon, Harold came across an old photo album. Tucked inside was a note Ellen had written to him on their 10th anniversary, a silly poem about their Sunday morning pancakes. That evening, he walked into the kitchen, flipped on the griddle, and said, "We're bringing pancakes back." That tiny ritual, just pancakes on Sundays, turned into something more. They started sharing small notes again, just like when they were younger. A weekly walk followed, then a monthly movie night. None of it was grand, but each act said, "I still choose you." Rediscovering rituals, old or new, is one of the simplest, yet most powerful ways to reconnect. Shared habits create emotional safety. They say, "I remember us. I still see us." Whether it's gardening together every Thursday, listening to jazz on a rainy day, or just holding hands during your evening news, these moments rebuild romance from the inside out. Here's a question for you. Do you and your partner have a ritual that brings you closer? Or is there one you used to love that faded over time? Share it in the comments. You might inspire someone else watching right now. And if this story of Harold and Ellen sparked something in you, tap the like button. It tells us to keep creating these videos and reminds the algorithm that elders have stories worth hearing. Ready for the next key to lasting romance? Let me know when to continue. Number 2. Embracing vulnerability in conversations. Picture this. You're sitting at the dinner table with someone you've shared decades of your life with. You talk about the weather, the news, maybe your next doctor's appointment. But when was the last time you talked about your fears, your hopes, or even how you've changed? Now imagine another version of that same dinner. This time, one of you puts down your fork and says, "Lately, I've been feeling lonely, even when we're together." It's quiet. It's vulnerable. But suddenly, the air is different. That one sentence breaks the wall that silence built. Too many of us, especially after 70, are taught to manage emotions, not express them. We come from a generation that valued strength, not softness. But here's the truth. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's intimacy in action. Scientific studies back this up. Dr. Breen Brown, a research professor at the University of Houston, has spent years studying vulnerability and connection. She found that when couples are able to share honestly, fears, regrets, dreams, they report deeper satisfaction and intimacy, no matter their age. It's not about dramatic confessions. It's about saying, I miss being touched, or I still want to feel desired, or simply, I need more from you. These words can feel risky, but they open a door, and behind that door is real romance. One couple I spoke to, John and Lillian, married for 52 years, started a tradition during the pandemic. Every Friday night, one of them had to answer this question: what's one thing you're feeling, but haven't said out loud? They admitted it was awkward at first, but over time, it became their most sacred time of the week. It made them feel seen again. So I'll ask you now, what's something you've been wanting to say, but haven't? If you feel comfortable, share it in the comments, even anonymously. You might be surprised how many others feel the same. And if this resonates with you, make sure to subscribe. We're building a space where honest conversations like these matter, especially for our generation. Shall we move to the next key? Just say the word. Number 3, reigniting touch, the forgotten language of love. Let's imagine two couples, both in their 70s. The first couple sits together on the couch every night, watching TV. They talk, they laugh sometimes, but there's a space between them. A physical space. They haven't held hands in weeks. Their hugs are quick, their kisses routine. The second couple also sits on the couch, but the husband absent-mindedly rubs his wife's back. She leans into him. When they laugh, they reach for each other's hand. It's subtle, but it's powerful. Their bodies are still speaking. The difference? One couple is coexisting. The other is still connecting, not just emotionally, but physically. Research from the University of Chicago found something startling. Older adults who maintain regular non-sexual physical affection, like holding hands or hugging, report 20 to 30% higher satisfaction in their relationships. That's not just about sex. That's about human touch. The skin is an organ of memory. When we stop touching, we start to forget how deeply we care. After 70, many couples stop reaching out physically, often out of habit, illness, or simply because they think that phase is over. But it doesn't have to be. Take Rose, age 76, and her partner, Ed. She told me, one day, I realized we hadn't danced in 10 years. So I played our wedding song in the kitchen and said, come here. He laughed, but he came. We danced barefoot for 3 minutes. And I cried, not because I was sad, because I remembered what it felt like to be wanted. Touch doesn't have to be grand. A hand on the shoulder, a kiss on the forehead, sitting close enough that your knees touch. These are reminders. I see you. I choose you. I still want to feel you near me. So I want to ask you, when was the last time you reached for your partner, not out of habit, but out of love? Share your story in the comments. Or, if this is something you miss, write about that too. You're not alone. And if this part of the video made you reflect, even just a little, give it a like. It tells us this message matters. When you're ready, we'll move to the next key. Number 4, creating new adventures together. Let me take you into a moment. You're standing at the edge of a small trail, a park you've never been to before. The air smells like pine. Your partner stands beside you. You're both a little unsure, maybe even a bit tired. But then, one of you smiles and says, let's see where it goes. This isn't about climbing mountains. It's about choosing wonder again. Because here's the truth. Romance thrives when couples explore something new, no matter how small. According to a study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, couples who engage in new and challenging activities together, even simple ones, show a significant increase in relationship satisfaction and emotional closeness. Why? Because novelty stimulates the brain's reward system. It mimics the thrill of early romance. And the beautiful thing? You don't need to be young to feel young again. I spoke with James and Bernadette, both in their early 80s. They joined a local photography class, not because they were good with cameras, but because they wanted something new to laugh about. Bernadette told me, at our age, you don't need to travel the world. Sometimes, discovering a new part of your neighborhood together is enough to spark magic. New adventures don't have to be physical. You can learn a new dance from YouTube, cook a recipe from a country you've never visited, or even read a book out loud to each other. The key is this: do it together. Because new experiences build new memories, and new memories breathe fresh life into old love. Here's my question for you. What's the last first you and your partner shared? Or what's one small adventure you'd like to try? Leave it in the comments. Let's build a list of inspiration together. And if you're finding value in this video, hit subscribe. These stories, these moments, they're just the beginning. Shall we continue to the final key? Let me know. Number 5. Healing old wounds to make room for new intimacy. Let's be honest, time doesn't just bring wisdom. It brings baggage. At 70 or 80, every long-term relationship carries scars. Some are small, forgotten birthdays, words said in anger. Others run deeper, betrayals, years of emotional distance, or pain we never fully spoke about. But here's what many couples don't realize. Unhealed wounds block romance. Not because love is gone, but because old pain takes up the space where closeness should live. One study from Stanford University found that couples who learn to acknowledge and revisit unresolved conflict, even late in life, experienced a dramatic shift in their emotional connection. Not because they erased the past, but because they stopped pretending it didn't matter. Let me tell you about Ron and Judith. Married for 50 years, they were what you'd call functionally distant. They got along, but there was tension under the surface, especially around Ron's years of working long hours, leaving Judith to manage everything at home. He thought it was understood. She thought he never cared. In therapy, which they started at 74, by the way, Ron finally said, "I didn't know how to be present back then, but I see it now. And I'm sorry." That one apology opened a floodgate. Judith cried for the first time in front of him in years. Not from sadness, but relief. They found each other again in the place they thought was broken. You don't need a therapist to start healing. You need courage. The courage to say, "I think we still have something we've never talked about." The courage to listen without defensiveness. The courage to forgive, not for them, but for your own peace. Here's what I want to ask you. Is there something in your relationship that's never quite healed? Something you've pushed aside to keep the peace? You don't have to share details, but if you felt this weight, write about it in the comments. Sometimes just saying, "Me too," can be the beginning of letting go. And if this part of the video felt especially real, don't scroll away. Like this video. Share it with someone who might need it. You never know whose heart it might reach. We've talked about 5 powerful ways to keep love alive. But before we close, there's one more thing I want to say. Let me know when you're ready for the conclusion. Romance after 70 isn't about recapturing who you were. It's about honoring who you are now and choosing, deliberately, quietly, and courageously, to keep showing up for love. Maybe your body has changed. Maybe your partner isn't who they used to be. Maybe you've lost someone, and you're learning to love again, differently, and with more tenderness than you ever thought possible. Wherever you are, remember this: romance doesn't retire. It evolves. We've talked about rituals, vulnerability, touch, new adventures, and the power of healing. None of these are quick fixes. They are slow acts of attention, of care, of listening, not just with your ears, but with your life. If you're still here, I want to thank you. Thank you for caring enough about your heart, and maybe someone else's, to stay through this conversation. That, in itself, is an act of love. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which part of this video spoke to you the most? What's one small thing you're willing to try this week to bring more warmth, more depth, more romance into your life? Scroll down and leave a comment. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read tonight. And if this video gave you even one new idea or one moment of reflection, please consider liking and subscribing. We're building a space here, a space for honest, meaningful conversations about aging, connection, and the kind of wisdom the world needs more of. You've lived a long life, but the story of your love? It's not over yet, not even close. We'll see you in the next video. Take care of your heart. It's never too late.